JJ, what does it feel like to be you?
Awesome.
I'm sick of covering Star Wars, you're sick of hearing about it, but the news won't stop. Today, trending on Twitter is release the JJ cut. Just a day after I covered psychopaths going and calling Lucasfilm employees and sending threats to J.J. Abrams directly, and in general losing their mind, having to require therapy. These are the same people that the very next day are demanding the cut, the JJ cut, of the Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker saga completion. What have I heard? Well, I'm reading that The Rise of Skywalker is supposed to be a 3-hour film that has Force ghosts, Anakin, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Luke, and company appear with Rey. I'm also told that there was some sort of Darth Vader. Now, you have Michael Eisner, former CEO of Disney, tweeting this hot take out just the other day. Hashtag Rise of Skywalker is an acceptable film. Zoinks! A lot of story and fan delights, but somewhat emotionless. While The Mandalorian on Disney Plus establishes show creator Jon Favreau as the new George Lucas, which Bob Iger, had the foresight to declare. Now, I don't want to get too far ahead of things because The Mandalorian is a decent show. And what I don't want Disney to do is to overreact here and push John into running the next feature film. Let him run The Mandalorian. Let him work on perfecting his craft and then maybe consider it. Because if you only get one shot, one bite at that cookie in terms of appeasing the fandom, and I believe that to be true, I don't want him to screw it up. He's our best hope, our only hope.
You're my only hope.
Now he continues. Daisy Ridley played Rey throughout the film with one expression, awe/fear, until the very end of the film when she reveals her name. That's what I meant by a film that somewhat lacked emotion. And then he goes on to clarify, in my previous comment, I didn't mean to suggest that Daisy Ridley acted poorly. On the contrary, she was excellent. The choice of attitude for Rey was intended and seems to fall on the philosophy of the character. Zoinks. Well, Michael Eisner seems to understand it, and there has been an inordinate amount of leaks. Now, of course, some people aren't happy with it. We've got some SJW takes here. This from Darth Jader. So basically, to sum up, the Reylo kiss was fan service. Disney is racist and homophobic and doesn't give one single poop about Star Wars or its actual fans. And there is a 3-hour cut out there that still exists, and we are just sitting here. Hashtag release the JJ cut. Hashtag release the Abrams cut. Interesting. And there's several screenshots here that go on to say the Kylo Ray scene where he passes was at least 4 minutes longer with more dialogue. Ben was always supposed to die. The source also added that if he wasn't, then there might have been an earlier draft in which they hadn't read. The first draft they read included Lando, the first few didn't. The Reylo kiss and Ben's death was not a part of the reshoots. It was a part of the re-editing. Even the cut that JJ thought was coming out earlier this month had a longer version of that scene than was shown in the theatrical cut. JJ was against the Reylo kiss, or Reylo in general. This was Disney's attempt to please both sides of the fandom. What? What part of, let's say, the fandom menace wanted any sort of romantic relationship between Ben and Rey. Who is clamoring for that? They also go on to say, this is according to new leaks. The source asked Poe after seeing Oscar Isaac's comment about how Disney didn't want it to be a thing. This is true. JJ fought to make this happen. This is why Oscar is blaming Disney. It's not just a random throwaway comment. He knows for a fact that Disney, because these discussions happened, the main cast is insanely close with JJ, and they are just as mad, though seemingly more outspoken about it than JJ. Well, JJ's trying to get work. During The Force Awakens, Disney was hesitant to hire John Boyega because a woman was front and center, so they deemed that risky enough. So bringing in a male lead who's black made them nervous. JJ fought to make this happen for about 9 months before getting approval. The same issue came up when JJ fought to have Finn and Poe in The Rise of Skywalker, the Finn and Poe relationship, I'm assuming they mean. But he lost that battle, as he lost many creative battles for the film. Many people, JJ included. The ending quote will blow your mind was part of this. Older actors were included, like Hayden, Ewan, and Samuel, and anyone who wasn't animated. The Force Ghosts weren't meant to be voices. They shot that footage on camera. The actors were in costumes. Rey was supposed to be surrounded by the Force Ghosts to serve as sort of a barrier between her and the Sith surrounding them. They go on to say, the JJ cut still exists and will always exist. We most likely will never see it unless someone, quote, accidentally leaks it. Now, I'm sure it's not uncommon to have multiple cuts of movies. As we've seen the Snyder Cut, release the Snyder Cut. I'm not understanding why you don't, in the day of digital media, in the day of needing heavy monetization, in the day and times of wanting that extra legs to market your films, why not release it as a second option and sell it? I mean, why not? You're just going to leave it on the cutting room floor anyway, on some USB stick stored away forever. Why not release it for $10? I mean, if they ever released the Snyder Cut, they would probably sell, I don't know, I'm guessing 100,000 copies, maybe more. And on top of that, you have literally no additional cost to do so. I mean, other than maybe setting it all up. I'm going to say effectively zero cost to put that into production, since the final cut exists. Maybe a couple of days work in editing to just kind of trim everything up, upload it to the server so you can put it out on Disney Plus, and you could sell a bunch of Disney Plus subscriptions. Now, there's a huge thread on Reddit where a lot of these leaks are coming from. Starts by saying, here's what I've been told from a source that worked on The Rise of Skywalker. Since shortly after release weekend, I've been corresponding with someone who worked closely on the production of TROS and works for one of the major companies I cannot disclose here. I have verified the source to my satisfaction. To protect the source, I'm rewording the things that we spoke over the last 2 weeks, and I'm submitting to you in bullet point format. Let's just take a look at a few of these. The leakers for TROS had an agenda and are tied to Disney directly. My source confessed that they have an agenda as well, in that they struggle with ignoring what's been happening to someone who they think doesn't deserve it. JJ always treated everyone on and off set with respect, so my source's agenda is what Disney has done to JJ and how much they screwed him over, and they want people to be aware of it. Disney was one of the studios who were in the Bad Robot bidding war last year. Disney had never had much interest in BR as a company, but they did in JJ because they saw WB, who JJ went with in the end, as a major threat. JJ is very successful in bringing franchises back like Mission Impossible, Star Trek, and Star Wars. That's debatable. I suppose you could say that the new Star Trek series, I mean, I saw it in the theater. I enjoyed it. I was always a Next Generation guy, and I kind of always see the various Star Wars series as kind of what's the word, compartmentalized. So they don't necessarily have the same lore to live up to that Star Wars does. So Star Trek has a little more creative freedom. I am excited to see the Picard show. They're trying to sell some sort of subscription to CBS to get that. I won't be doing that though. So hopefully a friend of mine points me in the right direction. The WB wants Abrams for some major DC projects. My source said that this generation Star Wars is the MCU, and Marvel's biggest threat is a well-operational DC. They want to keep DC in limbo, and that's what they're doing right now. Abrams jump-starting that franchise with something like successful, audience-pleasing Superman movie would make them nervous. Their goal is to make JJ look bad to potential investors and shareholders. That, again, is one of those... That is a claim that is illogical. The idea that Disney would tank Star Wars just to prevent J.J. Abrams from getting more work, that seems extraordinarily unlikely. And I've got to be honest with you all here. I'm not just going to read leaks and say that they're fact because they're on Reddit and they have thousands of upvotes. Now, usually inside of leaks, there's some amount of truth. We've seen with all the other Disney leaks, really all the leaks were true that were shared by Overlord DVD. They go on to say, my source mentioned this shortly after the premiere. The Tross we saw last night was the Tross we thought was not what we thought we worked on. JJ was devastated and blindsided by this. He's been feeling down over the past 6 months because some of the ridiculous demands Disney had that changed the movie's story. While the scenes were shot, a lot of changes were made in post-production, and the audio was re-recorded and altered. My source said that they've never seen anything like this happen before. He's a director and wasn't in the know about what they were doing behind his back. Apparently, JJ felt threatened over the past month leading up to the premiere. Ryan was never meant to do episode 9, despite some rumors that he was. JJ was brought back by Iger, not Kathleen Kennedy. Disney insisted on more fan service, less controversy. Now, that is a claim that I could see being true, given what they did at the box office. Now, the problem is you can't undo the damage that was done in The Last Jedi. And by the way, make no mistake about it, I believe that the media has been the media that Disney and all these other jerks support. They're the ones that sow the seeds of discontent most frequently. And what appear to be small things end up getting blown up, and the fans feel alienated and thus souring how they feel about the movie when they go in. Because you have this toxic fandom narrative that probably Disney doesn't want out there, and you've got hundreds of thousands of people who don't feel like seeing the movie, which is why we're seeing that the sequel, the trilogy finale, isn't even going to do as well as the sequel opener. Now, there were some cut scenes from Lightspeed skipping segments. Some of the planets were cut out. Kylo was on Mustafar scene was 2 minutes longer. There was a moment where Kylo seemed a bit dizzy and his vision was shown as blurry for a second, almost as if time stopped while everyone in the background was slow-mo fighting. Kylo hears Vader's breathing, then shakes his head, and time goes back to moving at normal pace, and he jumps right back into the battle. That would have been quite a scene. The other cut, the movie opened with Rey training. Her first scene with Rose was shortly after Rey damaged the BB-8 during training. Rose made a silly joke about how Poe was going to kill her for damaging the BB-8. There was a moment where Rey took a minute to process what just happened when she saw a vision during training. She looked distressed and worried. The next scene was noise as the Falcon was landing. Rey runs over there. There are two women who kissed at the end of the visible in the shot, and they were holding hands. One of them ran towards the Falcon as it landed. The JJ cut The cut JJ eventually and hesitantly agreed to in early December was 2 hours, 37 minutes long. It wasn't the cut we saw, which he would have approved, which is 2 hours, 22 long. Apart from the Force Ghost, there were crucial and emotional scenes missing. The cut they released looked chopped and taped back together with weak Scotch tape. Disney demanded they shoot some scenes that would have had things in it for merchandise. Quote, "They fly now" is one of them. It also JJ's least favorite scene. At a November screening of the 237 cut, he cringe groaned and laughed when the scene was on. Wow. My source knows JJ well enough, and that he's not just yelling type, but apparently in a meeting he yelled something along the lines of, quote, "Why don't you just put directed and written by Lucasfilm then?" My source wasn't present for that exchange, but knows some that were. My source thinks but cannot 100% confirm this is because of China. It's an official talk of sorts. Some via video FX people claim they got a list of approved shades of blue they could use on the Luke Force ghosts. Cutting them out was when Bad Blood turned into a nightmare for JJ because the movie he was making suddenly was unrecognizable to him. So they cut the Force ghosts because China does have some strict rules around ghosts and skeletons and things that you can display that are not, as they put it, not harmonious. JJ was not happy with the Last Jedi, Last Jedi took the story. The final result is a mix of that story and the story told by Disney and whoever tried to impress, certainly not the fans. JJ is gutted over the final results. Star Wars means a lot to him, and he had to sacrifice a large chunk of the story in TFA. He was promised more creative control in TROS, and instead, the leash they had on him was only tightened as time went by. A source said that this is the one franchise and the piece of his work he didn't want to mess up, and instead it turned out into the worst nightmare. He found out when he was blindsided by the cut when they presented it, and he said, WTF. When Kylo was fighting the Knights of Ren at the end and the Williams music that was used for it was not what he wanted at all. He seemed to think it was all out of place. JJ's cut will exist. It will always exist. We'll most likely never see it unless someone leaks it. This is going to go down seriously as the worst managed franchise in history. I felt this movie should have been close to 3 hours long, certainly. And there's just enough content and enough loose ends to absolutely warrant it. But for whatever reason, they thought they were pleasing the fans, and they didn't. You can't undo 6 hours of cinema that made a lot of problems in 2.5 hours. You just had to try to make the best of it, which I think that they probably think they did. I think at the end of the day, what would it hurt to release the JJ cut if it really exists? I'm going to participate in the hashtag, and maybe they will. You never know. Hope you enjoyed this video. We'll talk to you again real soon.